Hi and welcome to another of the tthe screencasts. In this session we're looking at skill acquisition, and as you can see there we're looking at the second part of the skill continuums. So let's get started. So by the end of the session what you should be able to do is know the classifications of each one of the skills. We've already covered several of these in our first screencast. So just to recap the ones that we've covered: muscular involvement, which was gross and fine, environmental, and the continuity. In this session we're going to be looking at pacing, difficulty, and organisation. Alright, so the pacing continuum I think is one of the easiest ones to understand, and most people find it very straightforward. Skills are either self-paced or externally paced. So what that means is self-paced, you decide when it starts, and for the most part you decide when the skill is actually finished. You determine the pace of the skill as you're carrying out as well. So normally that would be a closed skill. So let's have a think about that. A closed skill is one that we control. So we would also control the pace of this. So if Johnny Wilkinson's coming to line up for a kick, there's no one putting pressure on him to speed up. There's no attacker coming to, no defender coming to tackle him. Same in a netball shot, it's entirely up to you, your pace. But on the other end of the continuum, and remember that they always will move along here somewhere, to the extreme of this, externally paced, this is usually an open skill, but this is clearly reliant on the pace of the wind and the sea or the tide, and for that reason it's externally paced. So this one here is one of the more complex ones, and that's why I've broken the screencast down into two. Is this one's about the simplicity or the complexity of a particular skill. And the key term that I want you to note down is this subroutines. So before we actually look at this one, I want you to think about this. So if we've got a freestyle swimmer who's swimming along here, there are several subroutines, in other words smaller elements to the skill that make up the entire process. So here we could say that the leg kick, the arm action, breathing or body position are all subroutines that together make up our entire skill. Okay, so just bear that in mind. And in this example here, so we've got the ball toss, you could say the drawback, the actual hitting, and then potentially the follow through as well. So that skill can be broken down into smaller sections. So how do we determine whether we're either simple or complex on the continuum? So simple has a small number of subroutines, and the speed or timing of the particular subroutines and performance of the skill is not massively critical. There isn't a huge amount of information that we need to process, and the use of feedback isn't necessarily significant. So if you think about swimming, there aren't loads and loads of subroutines, and the information processing, you don't have loads of stuff to take on board. It's about obviously maintaining your technique, yes, and that's why we have a continuum. It's not completely simple. So let's compare that to the next one, and hopefully that will make it even easier for you to understand. Just imagine you performing a somersault or a tuck or a twist in the air. Now that there has a significant amount of information you've got to take on board, and it has many subroutines that are linked together, and the timing of those is obviously crucial. So a somersault, gymnastics, or even a tennis serve is more complex than you would say swimming. If you think how relatively simple it is to swim comparatively to do a gymnastics floor routine. So simple and complex. The amount of subroutines and how hard it is to perform the potential skill. Okay, and this is probably the other one that's very complicated to understand, but I'm going to try and help you with that right now. So we talk about the organisational continuum, and this one is whether something is high or low in organisation. So they're the two ends of your continuum. So for something to be low in organisation, what does that actually mean? Well, it means it's made up of subroutines that are easily separated, and if you wanted to, you could practice them alone. I always remember teaching year 9 basketball, and the easiest way to teach the layup was to break it down into the smaller sections. So you do the run up with the dribble, holding the ball, the 2 steps, then the jump, and then the hand action as well. So you broke that down into sub-routines. So I would say that that is relatively easy to break down. And you could say the same about something like this. A really good example to try and remember the low organisation is the hop, skip and the jump, or the triple jump. So anything that's got a routine in it, so gymnastics, trampoline or a swimming stroke, can be broken down into the smaller sub-routines. Alright, so hold that thought for a minute. So let's have a look then at something that's high in organisation, and again hopefully this will make it easy for you to understand. So sub-routines that are very closely linked and very, very difficult to separate without disrupting the skill. So usually these are practiced as a whole, and I think the perfect example is a golf swing, kicking a ball as well. So if you think about a golf swing, you're drawing back the club, you're driving through the ball, and then you've got your follow through, fine, and at a higher level I'm sure you could break that down. But let's say compared to our triple jump here, we can easily break that one down, where it's a lot more difficult to break down a golf swing. So it's easier to practice this as a whole, therefore we say it's high in organisation. Kicking a ball, again, is easier to practice as a whole, so therefore high in organisation. Alright, so let's have a look how that would pan out in an exam question. The classification of motor skill in sport is often used to determine the most effective practice methods. So what it's asking us for is our knowledge of classification of motor skill. Using a motor skill of your choice, mark into position on each of the following continua and write a justification for each placement. So it's asking you to name a motor skill, so that's a movement skill. So you would just put that in there, and then in here you mark along that line whether you would say it's a discrete skill, serial or continuous or somewhere in between. And then what you need to do is write in your justification underneath. So let's go back and have a look at our, so it's looking for discrete, serial and continuous, simple or complex, or low and high in organisation. So we'll do this one here. And if we took the golf swing, fine, we say it's high in organisation. So we write down what the skill is, and we would probably put our cross here. So let's chuck that in there. And we're going to turn around and say, yes, it's very, very high in organisation. And then in here, we explain why. Say, because the subroutines are hard to break down, and it's easier to practice as a whole, and that will achieve us our mark. Okay, feel free to go back over the screencast and check through each one of the continuums, and hopefully that will help you understand each one of the skill continuums. And if you haven't had a look, do feel free to have a look at section 1, which has the other continuums on there. Okay, thanks very much.